So the other day there, I was thinking about all the advice I wish I had gotten at the start of my furry journey. So I got together with a few of my furry friends who've either been in the furry community for a long time or they're new furs, and we made this list of advice we would give new furs to the community. I hope you enjoy it. So when you decide you want to become a furry, sometimes it can be super overwhelming. Particularly when you find out that there's a whole load of subgroups. Like you've got VR furs, you've got the convention furs, you've got charity furs, and you've got roleplay furs. And that's just listing a couple just out of like millions and millions of different types of groups. And I think that sometimes it can be super overwhelming because you're thinking, oh no, I need to get a fursuit or I need to get a fursona. And this is where my advice comes in. Take it slow. There's no race, there's nothing that's rushing you to get an answer. And just remember that, like, you actually don't really need anything to be considered a furry. You don't need a fursuit, you don't need a fursona. If you identify as a furry or like you just like furry things, then that's enough. You don't need to go out there and be like, oh, I've got my fursona, therefore I can be a furry now. No, 100%. Although I enjoyed having a fursona because I can show off woofles, but at the end of the day, you really don't need these things. It's more of a kind of an added thing rather than the main thing of being a furry. So once you've broken through this initial stage of being a furry, my next piece of advice would be to find a group of furries that you can trust and feel comfortable with, and make friends with them. Because as I said in my previous video, this is how I really started learning lots about the furry community. And it made it such a fun experience because instead of experiencing it through like a media or a forum or whatever, I experienced it with my friends. So everyone was all excited to teach me things and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And even more, it means that no matter what happens, like if you've got like the furry Twitter drama or furry forums like drama, it means it's all background noise to you because all you're doing is just enjoying furry things with your friends. So it doesn't matter what's happening in the community, it's just you enjoying this with your friends. And it's a lot more fun that way. Speaking of making friends, remember to be yourself. Because at the end of the day, when you be yourself, you will attract people who like you for you, and not for some act that you're putting on. And particularly socially, putting on an act can be really like draining. So just be yourself. And the great thing is that right now the community is actually growing, meaning that you don't need to be a uwu character if you don't want to. And I think that's great because then you can like develop your own groups. Like for example, we were talking about the role-playing group. You find a group of furries that you find comfortable with being yourself. And then you can have all the furry fun. Having said that, one thing that furries really need to remember is to respect boundaries. Because just because the community in general is very cuddly and snuggly and stuff, doesn't mean that everybody in the community is the same. And I think that's why if you meet somebody at like a fur con or something and they're a fursuiter or whatever, if you're going to hug them and you're not like obviously friends with them or anything, just make sure that you ask for consent before doing anything, because there's nothing worse than somebody who doesn't feel comfortable with being hugged, particularly in public. And yeah, so please make sure you ask for consent first. So disclaimer, I actually do like hugs. So my next piece of advice would be to be open-minded. Because as a community, furries are weird. And I think as a community we understand that. Because we know we're cringe, we know we're weird, we woo, we do all that stuff. I think we know that we're a little bit cringy. So when you go into, if you're looking for normal and normality, furries are definitely not a community like that. But I think that's okay, because like I said before, people are able to be themselves and be natural and be who they want to be. And I think as long as you're not doing anything illegal or hurting anybody, I think that is absolutely fine and you should do what makes you happy. And I think that the furry community does that for a lot of people. So my next piece of advice would be, do not just pay attention to Popufurs. So anybody that doesn't know, Popufurs are popular furries, and they've actually become popular for a reason. Whether it's their artistic ability, their personality, their gaming, their Twitch, their YouTube, their fursuit making, whatever it is, they've got there for a reason. But that doesn't mean that they're the only people worth paying attention to, because the furry community is full of super amazing and talented beings with their own little quirks and personalities. And I think by limiting yourself to like a handful of furries, you actually miss out on the bigger picture, and I feel like you actually miss out on a little bit of the community. So check out some small furries, you never know, you might find something you really like. So you've done all that, and you're looking to make a fursona. Well, I think that the best piece of advice I could give you is, do not steal somebody else's art. Because if you steal somebody else's fursona, then really it's not a sona. Because sona is like, the reason why it's called fursona is because it's your persona, your personality. So if you steal somebody else's, then you don't really get the full experience of being a furry, because it's you pretend to be somebody else, like I said before. So what I would say is, perhaps if you're looking to get somebody, an artist, to draw your fursona and make a unique one, then I would say just save up money and commission an artist. Otherwise, there are plenty of bases that you can do out there. Like for example, I am a Tatum, and I use the Tatum base, and then I textured them, and that's where Woofles came from. So I think that there's so many ways around. There's so many ways around getting your fursona if you can't afford it as well. So keeping on the topic of artists, do not beg for free art. And I must admit, I am not an artist, so I've actually not experienced this myself, but it can be really uncomfortable for an artist, particularly if they do commissions, to be asked for free art. Because if you do that, it makes them feel like, oh, I'm being a bad guy for saying no to somebody who loves this art and stuff. But it also just seems to come across like you're valuing their art as like worth absolutely nothing. And I know that's not the message generally people are trying to put across, because most of the time when they ask for free art, it's because they love the artist. But please, 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 if you love the artist, please try and support them by saving up money to commission them if you really do want to get some art from them. And I feel like the only exception from this would be if an artist does like a raffle for like free content. Like, you know, one of those on Twitter where you've got like, retweet this tweet and like, and I'll put your name in a raffle for a free drawing. I think that's one of the only exceptions to getting free art. But again, please do not beg in the comments, because all that does is make somebody feel really uncomfortable, and possibly even less likely to actually choose your name if they do the raffle. So please, 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 if you do really like an artist, save up some money and get a commission from them. So you've made your own fursona and you're putting it out there. Just remember to not worry about fursona judgment, because end of the day, this is your journey and this is your sona, and therefore nobody else gets to experience it. And it's true. This is your sona. I mean, look at me. I'm a basic bitch grey wolf, but this speaks to me. This feels right to me. Therefore, anybody that criticizes wolf sonas being basic or common or whatever, that's okay. That's them. Whereas for me, I just enjoy being a wolf. I get to woo. I get to be alone or be in a pack or whatever I can, and I think that it speaks to me. So if you've got a species or anything that you've created for yourself, then that's also totally fine. That's great. That's you. That's your stuff. And anything else, any judgment, is a them problem rather than a you problem. The next thing I want to advise people on is there is a lot of furry hate out there. Whether it's on Twitter, in public, or sometimes on this very channel, you can get a lot of people who just hate furries, and it has become a meme to like kick a furry day or whatever. And I think one thing we need to remember is that hatred generally comes from misunderstanding, and furries are up there with one of the most misunderstood communities out there. So if somebody is giving you hate for being a furry, be an ambassador and be polite, make sure that they're getting informed, and fight hate with love. Because who knows, you may actually be able to change their mind. And generally from what I've seen from some other videos I did, a lot of people have actually joined the furry community through anti-furry memes, which is pretty funny. So people who used to hate furries have generally become furries later on. So make sure that you don't bite into the furry hate and stuff. But remember, there's also a limit, because if somebody is like threatening you or threatening to kill you or whatever, anything that is of a threatening nature, please make sure you report that shit, because nobody should have their life threatened regardless. So my last piece of advice is to not worry about reaching out to other furries, whether you're asking like questions or like just wanting to learn a little bit more about the furry community. Because even I don't know everything about the furry community. I mean, for this video, some of the advice given is actually, I've contacted some of my long-term furry friends who know a little bit more about certain areas than I do. So there's nothing, it's all natural, and there's nothing to be ashamed for asking for a little bit of help sometimes. Because how else are we going to learn about these things? Also, there's nothing furries like more than talking about furry things. So those are pieces of advice we would give new furries. Is there anything that we missed? Anything that you guys would add? Pop them down in the comments, I would love to hear, and I might be able to do a part 2 with it. And if you fancy checking me out on Twitch, I'm on Monday, Wednesday and Friday over on Whiffles the Waffler, and if you want to send me your persona, check me out on Twitter, I'd love to see it. And more than anything guys, remember that you matter yesterday, you matter today, and you matter tomorrow, and I love every one of you. Mwah!